There is a stone in my hand. I picked it up at the Asopus 2 days ago, at the place where the river bends north of Trachis, where the reeds grow so thick you cannot see the water until you are standing in it. I do not remember picking it up. My hand was empty, and then it was not. The stone is grey, river-smoothed, the size of a closed fist. I have been turning it since the river, and I have not stopped. The Persians are camped on the plain below Thermopylae. Their fires cover the ground from the coast to the hills like a second sky laid flat. I have seen armies before, Thessalian levies moving through on their way somewhere, traders who brought news of fighting in the north. I had not seen this. No one in Trachis had seen this. Xerxes brought 2 million, they say. I do not know what 2 million looks like. I know what the plain looks like now, at night, with every fire lit. I know the path. That is the whole of it. That is everything that matters about me, to the men on that plain, and to the men in the pass, and to every person who will hear this story after I am dead. I know the Anopaea path. I grew up on the mountain. I have walked that trail since I was a boy, young enough that my father had to carry me on the steep sections, his hand under my arm, the smell of thyme and goat dung and the cold air that lives above the tree line even in summer. I know where the path widens. I know where the Phocians are stationed. I know the trail comes out above the pass, behind the Spartan line, where no one is watching. That is what I have to give. I have been thinking about what it is worth for 3 days. The Spartans came through Trachis on their march south in late summer. 300 men. I watched them from the doorway of my house, not hiding, just watching. The way you watch a thing that does not belong to your life, pass through it. They did not look at me. I am a Malian. I farm barley on the eastern slope. My father farmed barley on the eastern slope before me and his father before that. The Spartans were passing through toward the pass, and they had no reason to look at a man standing in a doorway holding a water jar. There is something I should tell you. 2 years before, I went to the Spartan garrison at Thermopylae with a land claim. The Phocians had moved a marker on the south boundary of my father's field, the field that came to me when he died, the field I have watered with my own labour for 11 years. There was a marker made of 3 stacked stones that everyone in the valley knew as the line between my land and Phocian land. And one morning, it was not there, and a week later, it was somewhere else. I went to the garrison because the garrison was the authority, because Sparta controlled the pass and controlled the valley and controlled everything worth controlling in this part of the world. They did not receive me. That is not a dramatic statement. I am not claiming that as the reason for what I did. I am telling you what happened. A Spartan perioikoi officer told me the matter was not within garrison jurisdiction and sent me away. I walked back up the mountain. The marker stayed where the Phocians had put it. My field is smaller than my father's field by 20 steps along the south boundary and has been for 2 years. Is that why I did it? I have asked myself that every night since the Asopus. I have not found the answer I expected. I went to Xerxes' camp on the 2nd day of the battle. The Persians had already made 2 assaults on the pass and been pushed back both times. I heard it from a trader who came through, wide-eyed, saying the Spartans were making sport of it, that Leonidas had pulled his men back to draw the Persians in, and then turned and cut them apart. The trader said there were Persian dead, stacked at the gate. I crossed the plain in the afternoon. The sentries stopped me. I told them I had information about a path. They took me through the camp, past rows of tents, past horses being watered, past men sitting and cleaning equipment or sleeping, to a place where the officer class was gathered, and then further to where the command tent stood. I was not afraid. I want to be honest about that. I was not afraid in the way I'd expected to be afraid when I practiced this in my head at the river. My hands were not shaking. My voice did not break. The stone was in my hand. I told them about the Anopaea. I told them about the width of the trail, the sections where horses could not pass and men had to go single file, the place where it came out behind the ridge. I told them the Phocians were posted at the top, at the meadow of the Asopus River, 1,000 men, but that the trail curved away from their position before the final descent, and that if soldiers moved quietly, they could be past the Phocians before the Phocians understood what was happening. The officer who received me sent word up the chain. I waited. The stone was in my hand. Bidans came himself. He was a precise man. He asked me twice whether I was certain of the trail, whether I could lead it in darkness. I said yes both times. He asked me why I was telling them this. I said I wanted a reward. That was true. It was not the whole truth, but it was true. He did not ask me the whole truth. No one asks for the whole truth when the partial truth is useful. We started up the mountain after midnight. 10,000 men. The Immortals. The best soldiers in the Persian army, moving in the dark up a goat trail that my father used to carry me up when I was young enough to need carrying. I walked at the front with 2 Persian guides. The trail was exactly as I remembered it. The oak trees in the lower section, then the open limestone above the tree line, then the long traverse across the face of the mountain where the wind comes in from the sea. I could see the pass from the traverse. The Greek fires were burning, small, orange, below us and to the west. I could not see men from that distance, only the fires. But I knew men were there. Leonidas was there, 300 Spartans, and the Thespians who had stayed. Demophilus and his 700 men who chose to remain when Leonidas dismissed the other allies. And the Thebans. I did not know any of them. I want to say that plainly. I did not know the men in the pass. They were not my family. They were not my neighbours. They were Spartans who had passed through my village without looking at me, and Thespians from a city 2 days' march away, and Thebans I had never seen. The record will call this a betrayal of Greece. Greece is a word that covers 1,000 cities that share a language, and nothing else. The Spartans had never called me a Greek when it mattered. They had called me a Malian and sent me away. And yet I stood on this traverse with 10,000 men behind me, and I looked at those fires. I kept walking. At the top of the mountain, above the final descent, we found the Phocians. They heard us in the oak leaves. The sound of 10,000 men moving in the dark is not silence, even moving carefully, and the Phocians were not asleep. They stood up. I could hear them. Then there was a pause, the way sound pauses before it breaks, and then the Phocians ran. I heard them running north along the ridge, away from us, into the darkness. Hydarnes did not pursue them. He looked at me. I had told him the trail would bring us out behind the Spartan position, and it had. He did not say anything. He looked at the path down to the pass and then back at the mountain above us, grey in the early morning, and then he began giving orders in Persian that I did not follow entirely. I stood and watched. This is the part I have not been able to leave. I stood on the mountain in the dark, and I watched 10,000 men begin their descent toward 300 Spartans who did not yet know we were above them. The fires in the pass were still burning, small orange far below, the same fires I had looked at from the traverse, and I stood and watched, and the stone was in my hand. I do not know what I expected to feel. I had expected something to resolve. I had expected the calculation that I had been running in my head for 3 days to reach its conclusion and settle and become quiet. I had expected to feel certain, or guilty, or afraid, or something with a name. I felt none of those things. I felt the stone, cool and smooth and grey and the size of a closed fist. The stone from the Asopus where I had stood in the reeds 2 days ago, deciding. My hand around it, the way a hand closes on something without being told to close. The Immortals went down the mountain. I did not follow them. I found out what happened from the Persians in the camp below. Leonidas knew before dawn. A runner or a seer or a deserter. The accounts vary, and I was not there. He knew the path had been used, that there were Persians above him, that the pass was forfeit. He dismissed the allied contingents, the men from Corinth and Mycenae and Phlius, and the others, and he stayed. The Spartans stayed. The 700 Thespians stayed, though Leonidas had released them. The Thebans stayed, though the Persians later said they surrendered at the first opportunity, and perhaps they were not wrong. The battle lasted until mid-morning. Leonidas was killed in the fighting. The Persians pushed forward after he fell, trying to recover his body, and the Spartans pushed back, and there were dead in a pile around him. Then the Immortals came down from the mountain. Then it was over. 300 Spartans, 700 Thespians. I sat in the Persian camp and I heard the number. I had known the number before I walked up the mountain. 300 Spartans, 700 Thespians, some Thebans. I had known that those men would die. That was the entire point of what I had done. That was the reason Hydarnes wanted the trail. I knew. I walked up the mountain knowing. I knew at the Asopus when I picked up the stone. I knew before that, when I was still in my house, watching the fires on the plain from the doorway. Knowing before does not prepare you for after. That is the thing I did not understand. They gave me silver. Not Xerxes himself. A Persian officer whose name I did not learn gave me a quantity of silver in a cloth bag, and that was the reward. I held the bag the way you hold something that weighs more than it should. I do not know what I expected. I had said I wanted a reward, and I had received one, and it was silver in a bag, and it was ordinary, and it was finished. I left the camp that afternoon. I did not know where I was going. North, away from the pass. Thessaly eventually. The Greeks would put a price on my head once the battle news spread, and Trachis was no longer safe, and there was nothing in Trachis now anyway. The land claim was still unresolved, the marker was still where the Phocians had put it, and I could not farm a field in a valley that would execute me. I walked north on the road through the mountain pass with the silver bag in one hand and the stone in the other. The Anopaea was behind me. The fires in the pass had gone out. Somewhere on the road, I do not remember where, I stopped walking. I stood on the road and I tried to count, not the dead. I did not know the exact number, and I was not going to reach a number that meant anything. I tried to count the days. The day I went to the garrison about the field. The day I stood in the doorway and watched the Spartans march through without looking at me. The day I stood at the Asopus with the reeds high around me and held a stone, and thought about what I knew. The day I walked across the plain to the Persian camp. The night on the mountain. The morning in the camp when I heard the number. I counted 6 days. 6 days between the man at the Asopus River and the man on this road. I do not know if that is a long time or a short time to become the thing they will call me. They will call me a traitor. The word in Greek will stick to my name the way clay sticks to a sandal and dries there and becomes part of the texture of the thing. Ephialtes of Trachis, the man who showed the Persians the path. The man whose name will become the word for nightmare, for the thing that visits you in the dark and stops your breathing. I do not know yet that they will do this to my name, but I know the shape of what is coming, the way you know weather from the color of the morning sky. They will remember Leonidas. They will carve him into stone and write poems about the 300 and speak of the pass at Thermopylae as a holy place. They will not be wrong to do that, but they will not remember why I was at the Asopus. They will not record the garrison officer who sent me away. They will not write down the Phocian marker or the 11 years I worked that field. They will not write down what it felt like to stand in a doorway and watch 300 Spartans pass through your village and not one of them see you. They will write my name and the path and the number. That is the whole of what they will keep. In Thessaly, I lived 4 years. I worked. I was careful. I kept to myself the way a man keeps to himself when his name is already in circulation and the price on it is public. No one in Thessaly knew my face. Faces do not travel as fast as names. And I was a man from the south who had come north for reasons he did not discuss, which described half the men in Thessaly in those years. 4 years is a long time to live with a thing. I am not going to tell you I was tormented. I was not tormented in the way the stories would want. I slept. I ate. I worked in the early mornings when the air was still cold and the light came in from the east, the way it comes everywhere, indifferent to what you have done. I thought about the pass sometimes and sometimes I did not. I thought about the stone sometimes. I had thrown it in the road that first day, somewhere between Thermopylae and the Thessalian border. I do not know why. My hand opened and it fell and I kept walking. What I thought about, more than the pass, more than the number, was the trail. The Anopaea at night. The oak trees in the lower section, then the limestone above the tree line, then the long traverse with the sea wind and the fires below. My father's hand under my arm on the steep sections. The smell of time. That trail was mine before it was theirs. I had known it longer than any of them. The Phocians did not know it the way I knew it. The Spartans did not know it existed. It was a mountain trail above a village that no one cared about, walked by farmers and goat herds and boys being carried by their fathers on the steep sections. I gave them the one thing I knew that no one else knew. Is that a betrayal, or is that a man with nothing else to give? I've had 4 years to ask that question, and I have not run out of ways to ask it. A man named Athenades found me in Anticyra. He did not come for the price. He came because of something between us, an older grievance that had nothing to do with Thermopylae, and Herodotus will record this honestly. To his credit, the Greeks honoured Athenades anyway, after, because the reason did not matter to them, only the result. That is the last honest thing I have to tell you. The reason does not matter to them, only the result. I am standing at the edge of a river in the early morning, the reeds around me, the water moving past my feet with the particular sound that rivers make when no one else is listening. My hand is empty. The stone is gone, somewhere on the road between Thermopylae and Thessaly, and my hand has been empty since then, and I have not found another stone that fits it. I do not know if that means anything. The fires in the pass were orange and small and far below me on the mountain, and I looked at them for a long time before I walked on. And I remember them the way you remember a thing you knew you were looking at for the last time. The reeds are high around me. The water moves. My hand is empty.